Hey there, folks. Thanks for joining me again. I'm here today to talk to you guys about the wonderful world of aquarium substrates. Now, this really is a topic that I get excited about. I've been growing plants my whole life. I've got a large collection of bonsai, and that's really what led me into the aquarium hobby. So, as you can probably see behind me, all of my tanks are planted tanks. I don't do a lot of aquascaping, but I do have really heavily planted tanks. And the substrate you use is a very misunderstood, very controversial topic among us here in the hobby. So I'm going to try to cover some ground today, talk about some of these different substrates that we've got available to us. I'm going to show you some things that you may not be familiar with, and then we're going to talk a little bit about some common products that are available to most all of us, and I'm going to try to tell you what I think is really the ultimate solution. There is no best choice for everybody in every situation. So I'll go ahead and tell you that right off the bat. Now, let's get started with what's available out there, what we're all comfortable with. We've all seen the aquarium with just plain sand in the bottom. That will work to grow plants and to have a healthy aquarium and ecosystem if you want that, and if you're willing to kind of do the little bit of extra work that is involved. If you use some root tabs, if you make some wise choices with your plants, an inert system, an inert substrate system will work just fine. So you can definitely get away with just sand or just gravel and still grow plants, and everything will be just fine. I have plenty of aquariums in my collection right now that run a completely inert substrate, be it plain sand or plain gravel, and they still grow plants just fine. Having said that, you are not going to get the best performance from either your plants or your aquarium as an ecosystem, in my opinion. So there's a lot of other choices that we can incorporate into the sand and or gravel, use in conjunction with sand and or gravel, or just use in place of altogether. There's a couple of basic methods that we run into. The most obvious, the most common thing, if you're a beginner, that you're going to run up on, you're probably watching videos with really elaborate aquascaping things. Most of those folks are using what we call an aqua soil. Now, when I got into doing planted aquariums, honestly, I didn't even know what aqua soil was. I couldn't quite figure it out at first because it's not just one thing. There's several brands that produce what we have now come to commonly call aqua soil in the hobby. So the one that we can most commonly get here in my area in the southeast U.S. is the Fluval product. And Seachem has some products that are kind of like that, but none of them are cheap. You know, the Fluval product that we're looking at right now, that stuff is very expensive. If you're doing a small aquarium, if you're a beginner and you have like a 5-gallon tank or a 2.5-gallon tank, that's a really viable choice. Go for that. Just use it by itself. Don't wash it. Don't rinse it. Put it straight in the tank. Let the dust settle. But for a larger tank, if you're doing a 3-foot tank, a 40-gallon, or a 4-foot tank, like a 60 or a 75 or 55 even, you're going to spend a ridiculous fortune buying enough of that stuff to have any kind of real substrate. So a lot of us have looked for alternatives, and there's a lot of good alternatives. And honestly, with the aqua soil type products, you have to do more water changes than I want to do, because they do have nutrients that they are constantly leaching into the soil. So I like aqua soil in small containers in some of my small aquariums and some of my shrimp tanks. We're looking at a yellow caridina shrimp right now, a tank that's been working really good, that is really just aqua soil. It has a little bit of Fluval Dark from another tank that existed previous in its very base substrate layer. But that's all aqua soil, and it's doing pretty good. I've done more water changes on this tank than on pretty much any other tank that I have, but it's a 10-gallon, so it's real easy. Anyway, On to these other things. Eco Complete is the next one I want to talk about. And Eco Complete is a slightly more affordable version of what we have as the Fluval Aqua soils and some of the Seachem fluorite dark, fluorite red, all that stuff. The Eco Complete, again, a little bit more affordable. It's a basalt product, so it's a volcanic rock basically that's black. I think you can get it in red. But it has some kind of mineralization in it, but it doesn't contain a large amount of nutrients. When I have used the Eco Complete, I have not had to do repetitive water changes to kill down the algae when I first set up tanks. It's been pretty stable. It's been pretty easy to use. I have not used it by itself in open water, but I have mixed it with other things and had it where it was not capped, and I didn't seem to get any kind of outrageous algae bloom. So Eco Complete is a really good product. I oftentimes will mix the Eco Complete with a couple of other products to get a really stable, long-lasting substrate. And we'll go ahead and talk about that right now. We might as well. My favorite substrate of all, I'm going to tell you some secrets towards the end, so stay tuned. But my favorite substrate of all that you see in most of my tanks that are running under gravel filters is just a mix of the Eco Complete with the Tractor Supply oil dry product, which is what we call Fuller's Earth, which is a baked clay, and it's called Safety Zorb. So you have to really clean this extremely well. But mix that with a little bit of the Eco Complete, and if you want to go the full circle, throw a little bit of the fluorite red into that to give it some iron, extra iron. And that is my favorite substrate outright. If you are putting together any kind of planted tank and you want a gritty, kind of chunky, well-breathing substrate, that mix of Eco Complete with the Safety Zorb and the fluorite red is my ultimate best substrate altogether. However, there are many other choices. Most of you guys, particularly if you're beginners, you've seen a bunch of things about the Walstad method, and you've probably watched a lot of videos by MD fish tanks, and I like all of those things. I was just watching Fish Shop Matt glue his fingers together a minute ago. I really like what Diana Walstad has to say. I have some Walstad tanks myself that have been very successful, but I've had some that have not. I've used the MD fish tanks method, which that's what I'm calling it, which is basically putting down a nutrient-rich bottom layer of substrate mixed with some gravel or something like Eco Complete, and then capping that with a sand. I've used that method in a lot of tanks, and I've had on and off success with that. But the key to that method is really having something like this pond compost to serve as a very nutrient-rich layer below your cap. And again, some of the tanks I've had have been exceptionally well performing. My 75-gallon tank is basically that method, and it has worked really well. I've got my bonsai tank. If you watch my fish room tour, I've got my bonsai tank right back here, which I'll show you a video clip of that. It's using basically this pond compost in bags with topsoil and kind of a Walstad method. It has worked well, but the problem that the heavy nutrient-rich base brings up is that sometimes it can get out of control, and none of us seem to know why. If you've been in this hobby for a while, even if you've just been watching videos, if you haven't had 1,000 tanks, if you don't have a giant fish room that you sit in all day and play with this stuff, you still realize that, like, people are failing. You know, you watch Serpa Designs and some of his tanks, they kind of turn out bad after a while. They always look great at first, but the algae will take over or the plants will not catch on. You watch MD Fish Tanks, same thing is happening. You watch the Green Aqua people. I think they just put out a video just recently before I'm making this about how, you know, even the professionals can fail. We really don't know why some of these tanks are failing sometimes. And the largest variable, I think, comes from the substrate. Some of it has to do with the rocks, but a lot of it is the substrate. So using that really nutrient-rich pine substrate and capping that, it can work, but it can go bad. So just be aware of that when you're thinking about these things. Now, I've got two other products I've got in front of me that I want to talk about as far as unique substrates go that you may not be aware of. So what I've got here is what we call Akadama, and this is a bonsai product, or really just a potting soil from Japan that is widely used outside of Japan strictly for bonsai. It is a fired clay product, very similar to the Safety Zorb product from Tractor Supply, but it is generally not fired as hard. I have found amazing success using Akadama because I just copied what the Japanese folks were doing. I watched a bunch of Japanese language YouTube videos about aquariums and small ponds for several years, and they're all using Akadama, which was a product I've been using since I was a kid with my bonsai. So I was very comfortable finding it, getting it, using it. I understand it. It works really well, particularly outdoors in your ponds and even indoors in your aquariums. I've used it in aquariums. I've used it in a lot of ponds. You're looking at some footage right now of one of my Medaka ponds that is built almost exclusively with a Akadama substrate. Now, in addition to Akadama, which is hard to get in America, we have a product that is known as calcined clay, and it is essentially the American version of Akadama. It is a really hard fired clay product that will last basically forever. It has some different mineral properties than Akadama does, so I'm not totally sure how all of the calcined clay tanks are going to play out over time. But I have been using it for the past couple of years. I have had great success with it. I'm using it in this pond that you're looking at right now, which has a ton of terrestrial plants growing out of it. This tank that you're looking at, this little Medaka pond that sits in my basement corner, has about a 10-inch deep gravel substrate that goes up to that little rear section where you see all those plants coming out of the water. And then it's all calcined clay. It's kind of got a little rock wall where I built a little dam type thing and filled it in with that calcined clay. And the plants have just gone nuts. Yes, they are out of the water, so they should be growing pretty well, but it's been a really good aquarium substrate so far. I've used it in a couple of ponds. I've had good success with the calcined clay that you can get from your bonsai suppliers online. Bonsai Boy, I think, is where I got mine. So to circle back to the Safety Zorb and to finish this conversation up, Safety Zorb is a very interesting product. This Fuller's Earth has an extreme absorbent quality to it. It is made to absorb oil and all kinds of nasty stuff. But in our aquariums, it kind of does the same thing. And if you use it correctly, it can be a great benefit. All of these other aquarium substrates that you may find at PetSmart or online, they're all going to work. Like you don't even have to have a substrate. You can grow all these plants that we talk about all the time just in plain water. They're just going to grow. They might not grow as well, but they will grow. But the Safety Zorb has some interesting characteristics that most things do not. And I do believe it is one of the main contributing factors to the entire undergravel system that I'm running in a lot of these being almost entirely algae free. So when you use this Safety Zorb, if you mix a substantial amount of it into your substrate, or if you use it by itself particularly, I don't suggest using it by itself, to be honest. You really need to mix it up with a little bit of something else. The Eco Complete is a good thing to cut it with, or definitely some Fluval Red. You guys are looking at some tanks right now that are using just Safety Zorb mixed with Fluval Red to add some iron into that whole situation. But when you set your tank up with that stuff, you really have to add a ton of mineralization into your water for the first couple of weeks. There's a couple of videos online about charging your substrate when you're using this stuff. That's what they're calling it. And I guess that's a good way to describe it. But you do have to add for me was just a lot of baking soda in there and letting it dissolve and letting that safety absorb soak that mineralization in, because I have very, very soft water. When I use my TDS meter, I'm running about 50 ppm. Maybe even lower, maybe between 45 and 60 is what I'm getting here in my water. So it's very soft. It's almost neutral pH, but it's very soft. So this safety absorb will just soak all of the mineralization, all of the carbonate hardness out of my water, and it had caused things to crash due to being too acidic a couple of times. I had to really be careful with it and test it out a few times before I was confident in using it the way that I do now. In the end, what I found is, again, if you'll just put it in, even if you don't put it in your aquarium, if you just put it in a bucket and add a lot of baking soda in there that's been mixed into water, it will soak that stuff up, and you will then be able to use it properly. I believe there's some people talking about adding nutrients into this stuff in a bucket and letting it soak in with nutrients as well, but I'm not so hot on that idea. I really want my substrates to be relatively inert. I want them to hold nutrients and minerals, which is what the Akadama and the calcine clay are really good at, because they're so porous, but they hold on to stuff that if you put nutrients into that mix, they will hold on to that fertilizer for a while and slowly release it to your plant's roots, which I think is the main thing that really all of these fired clay products are doing for us, is they're able to soak stuff in from the water and then slowly release it back out. Whereas if you have a plain gravel substrate or just sand, it's just passing things on. There's no absorption and then slow release. So that's what I've got to say about these substrates. If you want to go for the MD tanks and the Walstad method, a pond compost is a really good choice over topsoil, because this stuff doesn't float. So if you want to try that Walstad method, go with the pond compost. It's available on Amazon. It's really easy to get. It's pretty cheap for the amount that you get there, and it has a lot of nutrients. If you use it well, you'll have some great results, like you're seeing in my 75-gallon tank right now. It has a lot of that compost in the bottom mixed with gravel and some Eco Complete and some Akadama. A little bit of everything is in that tank. If you want to go for the bagged method that you see a lot of the YouTubers using, I haven't had as much success with that. I'm just going to say stay away from using bags. I don't think it's good. I think it even further prevents the circulation of oxygen and water through your substrate. So I'm not doing that anymore. I do have tanks that I've had success that way, but I don't like it. If you have a bonsai shop near you, go get you a bag of Akadama. You will be really happy when you mix it into your bottom layer of substrate and see what it does to your tank. It has a positive effect in some way. I don't know what it does, but it's doing something really cool. Anyway, thank you guys for joining me again today. Substrates are a really exciting part of the aquarium hobby. It's one of the biggest variables that we have, and it's very mysterious. Nobody really knows what's right and what's wrong and what's going to work which way. You just kind of have to try a bunch of things out. To repeat what I said earlier, my favorite ultimate substrate is the Eco Complete mixed with the Safety Zorb. And with the Safety Zorb, you really got to clean it well before you use it. You got to screen it and wash it. And then mix in some Fluorite Red or Fluorite Dark. I think it looks really cool. I've heard some comments that it doesn't look great, but I think it looks amazing. That's my favorite if I had to just give you one thing. But even with that, I tend to mix some of these other products in with that. If I'm not using an under gravel filter, I will put a nutrient substrate in there as well, maybe deep down, but give them some kind of food, but maybe not as much as you're seeing on some of these YouTube videos that I've witnessed. Anyway, If you made it this far, please like my video if it's got anything that's helping you out in it. And if you would be so kind as to subscribe to my channel, I would greatly appreciate it. It would mean the world to my online digital existence. It is the only way I get to stay here and talk to you. So thank you. We'll see you guys next time.